Believe it or not, I try to focus my content on the things I actually enjoy, the things I like doing, the things I like talking about, the things I'm building, all the things that bring me joy. But today I have to do two things that bring me no joy at all. I have to talk about politics, and more importantly, I have to defend Anthropic. I can't believe I've been put in this position. I really have tried to avoid anything politics related since I started this channel over 4 years ago. But when the US government starts sending threats to labs, I think it's time for me to jump in. The Pentagon has just threatened Anthropic, specifying that they must comply with the government's requests or they will be listed a supply chain threat. That's a pretty big deal, especially because we've never had any supply chain threat identified and marked that was a US company in the history of the United States. This is unprecedented action that, yes, is targeting a lab I happen to like making fun of a lot. But I hope we can all agree, after we talk about this a bit, that this is an absurd overreach that no free country should be able to do. I have a lot to say here, from the original statement that the government put out in January to the follow-up from Sean Parnell and the formal threats that are now being made to Anthropic, to Dario's response that he just published a few hours ago, where he seems to be rejecting these new policies being pushed on him. There's a lot to dive into here, and I'm going to do my best to cover this in as reasonable and neutral a way as possible. But since this is such a highly political topic, finding a sponsor is going to be a bit tough. So please give some love to whoever agreed to sponsor today's video. Hey you're a pretty good engineer, right? I'm sure you've been in this position before. A user reports a bug, you know the exact code that caused it, you hop in the code base, fix it, takes you 5 minutes max, and then you're stuck sitting there waiting for 30 plus minutes just so the build can complete for code you already know works. That's kind of insane, right? Well, today's sponsor Depot is here to make you feel way less insane. They're gonna make your builds comically faster, not like 20%, closer to like 20x. Posthog saw a 15x improvement in their build times, gRPC saw a 7x improvement, Zed saw 1.4x, Apache Kafka saw 3.1x, even Mastodon saw 7x. The difference is crazy. They saved their customers almost 250,000 hours last week alone. Kind of crazy. There's a reason companies like Posthog, Jane, Poolside, and more all use them. Hell, even Inference, the company that does hardware provisioning, also uses them too, which is nuts. It shows just how valuable what they built is. The Depot cache and remote container builds are honestly kind of magical. You provision Docker images and then everyone on your team runs the Depot command instead, and suddenly everything is way faster. Their cache is also incredible, and it's not limited to just their CI. Once you have something in their cache, your whole team can access it, so everything they do, even local builds, will be up to 10 times faster. So if you're tired of waiting for CI or you just want those Docker builds locally to be way faster, there's no better place than soydev.link/depot. And use code Theo for 75% off your first month. Let's start from the top. Memorandum for senior Pentagon leadership commanders of the Combatant Command's Defense Agency and Department of War Field Activities Directors. President Trump makes clear in Executive Order 14179, it is the policy of the United States to sustain and enhance America's global artificial intelligence dominance in order to promote human flourishing, economic competitiveness, and national security. This is the important piece here. In the national security domain, AI-enabled warfare and AI-enabled capability development will redefine the characteristics of military affairs over the next decade. This transformation is a race, fueled by the accelerating pace of commercial AI innovation coming out of America's private sector. The United States military must build on its lead over our adversaries in integrating this technology established during President Trump's first term to make our warfighters more lethal and efficient. I hate to call out things like this because I really am trying to not be political. I just want to cover the news here. But as a person who cares a lot about text, formatting, copy, and how messages are presented, this piece here, established during President Trump's first term, that 6-word statement here shows that the whole point of this document is to perform the glazing process on Donald Trump. This is not a factual document that is meant to drive the nation forward. This is a political document meant to make a specific person feel good. This 6-word piece would not be in a document for any other reason, because Trump obviously had nothing to do with the creation of AI and the random chance that OpenAI happened to release ChatGPT during Trump's term is not a meaningful piece of information other than to make Trump feel good. So if there was any doubt for anybody, regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on, that this is just a political performance and not like something more meaningful, you're just wrong. There are 6 words here that prove you wrong. You cannot sit here and pretend that this is a good faith document and a good faith representation of things. You can say it doesn't matter. You can say, well, yeah, they do things like that. I don't care, though, because they're doing what I want. That is fine. Just make sure you recognize that the difference between this and the difference between literal propaganda from China is the side of the world that they were inked on. Just need you guys to be factual here. Anyways, there's a lot of other little details in here. Most of it doesn't matter too much, but the AI model parity section is somewhat important. They directed the department to establish a delivery and integration cadence with AI vendors that enable the latest models to be deployed within 30 days of public release. And another totally not political statement: diversity, equity, and inclusion and social ideology have no place in the Department of War, so we must not employ AI models which incorporate ideological tunings that interfere with their abilities to produce objectively truthful responses to user prompts. I've never heard about DEI more than I have during this admin, for what it is worth. They seem to think about it a lot. Kind of nuts that a document about AI in war has a whole section about DEI, but that's where we're at in 2026. The important part here is that they direct that under the Secretary of War for Acquisition and Sustainment, that they incorporate standard any lawful use language into any Department of War contract through which AI services are procured within 180 days. This means that if it is considered within the law, they should be able to use the models for it. That's the important piece. Any safeguards that the models have to prevent things like killing people, making weapons, commanding weapons, scanning, surveillance, all of the things that a lot of these labs have went out of their way to prevent. Any lawful use means that if the US declares it is within the law, then the model has to be allowed to kill people. Any safety guards that the models have in place have to be turned off for the government as long as the thing the government is doing is considered by the government to be within lawful use. One more important piece here is this idea that this is language they want to insert into any Department of War contract through which AI services are procured. That means there's a really simple solution. If a company doesn't want to provide this to the government, they can choose to not. Historically, that's how free markets have worked. And for better or worse, and this is going to piss off all sides, I tend to like free markets. For the most part, they seem to balance things out okay when controlled and set up properly. Part of a free market is your ability to refuse customers. As a business owner, you should and do have a legal right to refuse customers based on the requests the customers make. If a customer asks for a service you don't want to provide, you are totally within your legal right to refuse to provide said service, as should obviously be the case. And this is why I'm so scared. The Pentagon has given a straight-up ultimatum to Anthropic. Why would they do that? It's because they really want to use them. The US military already is using Anthropic models. In fact, they used Claude in the Venezuela raid that just happened a few weeks ago. They're using Anthropic alongside Palantir. Apparently, Anthropic and Palantir have a partnership. I bet a lot of y'all didn't know that. Yeah. Seems like the government likes the Claude models. Someone should introduce them to Codex 5.3. Jokes aside, though, there are a lot of things that a lot of different models work in, and when you're testing all of them thoroughly, you'll regularly find that one thing is slightly better than another thing at certain stuff. And Anthropic models seem to be quite popular with the US government, which is why they are playing hardcore here. Apparently, Anthropic's the only AI company with models currently operating on classified military systems. Interesting. I did not know that. Fascinating. Pentagon's ordered the firm to bend to their demands by Friday, specifically stating that if they don't do it, the Trump administration would invoke the Defense Production Act, which is an act that was put out for defenses during wartime to identify threats in the supply chain, like, I don't know, the company making the computer you put in the tank that you're about to ship to go fight that country. Like, if you're in war with Germany, Germany shouldn't be manufacturing parts for your tank. This is a law from the 50s. It's not a law that gets used a whole lot, and it's never been used against a company that is part of America. There has never in history been a case of the Defense Production Act being used to flag and punish a company within the United States. This would label Anthropic a supply chain risk, which would complicate a shitload of stuff for them as a company. According to Sean Parnell, who's the assistant to the Secretary of War for all of that, his statement is as follows. Department of War has no interest in using AI to conduct mass surveillance of Americans, which is illegal, nor do we want to use AI to develop autonomous weapons that operate without human involvement. This narrative is fake and being peddled by leftists in the media. Man, which party's being more political here? Like, how absurd is it that I, a disgruntled YouTuber, am doing a better job of describing what's going on here in a neutral way than the employees whose jobs it is to do that of the government? He is not a politically elected position here. He is an assistant to the Secretary of War. It's his job to communicate, not his job to be political. That is insane. Statements like this from the assistant to the Secretary of War are genuinely absurd. Here's what we're asking. Allow the Pentagon to use Anthropic's models for all lawful purposes. This is a simple, common sense request that will prevent Anthropic from jeopardizing critical military operations and potentially putting our warfighters at risk. We will not let any company dictate the terms regarding how we make operational decisions. They have until 5:01 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday to decide. Otherwise, we will terminate our partnership with Anthropic and deem them a supply chain risk for the Department of War. The supply chain risk designation goes a lot further than the Department of War. They're wording it this way to make it sound like they are just banning them from DOW. They are not. This is a wide-reaching punishment that they are inflicting on Anthropic because they do not like how they are being treated. This is the problem. The government's supposed to defend companies' rights to refuse customers and refuse requests of customers, not the opposite. Obviously, customers have rights, but it is not your right to force a business to operate entirely differently. I've been forced to defend a lot of things I don't like this way. There's a famous developer who I won't name here that claimed Apple was breaking the law by not exposing iMessage over API. I love shitting on Apple for doing stupid bullshit, but that is absurd. Apple is in no way compelled to provide every feature, every service, everything that they do for their customers over API to third parties. Obviously not. That makes no sense at all. They are a business that gets to choose what they do and don't provide as services. You can't force me to provide API keys on T3 chat because then we go bankrupt. We're not going to do it. We're building a different product. Anthropic is building a different product. They're not building an AI for war. They're building an AI for general safe use. And the US government seems mad as all fucking hell about that. Even comparing this to other companies is not really fair because if a company has a customer that is being annoying, they just cut them off. It's fine. It's totally fine. But the government can do more. The government can threaten you. The government can threaten laws and sanctions and all of these other things. And the fact that they're invoking these laws against a company that I don't even like I'm designated Anthropic's #1 hater, and I am proud of that title. I love shitting on Anthropic so much. Yet my love of freedom and free markets is forcing me to defend them here. How the fuck is it that I am the one fighting for fair markets and the right-wing government is the one that is fighting against me? Quick clarification, the Defense Production Act is a new Defense Production Act separate from the one from the 50s. And this one's actually significantly worse. The original DPA was from the Korean War, but it has been extended many times since then, most recently through September 2026. DPA already applies to AI. The Biden admin actually added a section here requiring AI companies to report on training activities, red team results, and model weights. And that was under Title 7, which is information gathering, which is like the different levels of intensity for which this acts. Title 7 is very low intensity. It's they can ask for information. Title 1 is they can compel the business to do what the government wants. This is, to be very clear, the government using the Protection Act to enforce companies compelled to their will. The exact quote, the president can require that performance under contracts or orders, which he deems necessary or appropriate to promote the national defense, shall take priority over performance under any other contract or order. This is that the government, specifically the president, can put something in front of whatever other work the company's doing, saying you have to do this right now. This act has been used for good things before, like rationing metals during the Korean War, or for using it to redirect medical supplies, vaccines, and test kits during COVID. Like, this can be used for good things. Never has it been used to mark somebody as a domestic risk and try to nationalize a business. This seems to be the section the argument's going to come down to, whether or not the changes the government's requesting are changes to the product versus lifting of restrictions. If there are just a couple lines of code that Anthropic can turn off, then this should be totally legal. And the government's going to argue that that is the case. If that isn't the case, if it turns out these safety guardrails are so deeply baked in the model that you can't get them out, then they're possibly going to use the same thing to do forced retraining. The government could compel Anthropic to retrain or make a new Claude, like a Claude 4.6 willing 2 kill. Some other model could be made by the government spec and the government's requirements. And that would be a new product rather than dropping contractual restrictions. The government's tried this before, trying to get some iPhones unlocked after a shooting, claiming that Apple should be forced to unlock them. Apple couldn't even unlock them, and the government said, no, you have to make a way then. That was a whole shit show. God, I hate when the government makes me defend companies I don't like. I'm really tired of this happening over and fucking over. There are criminal penalties if Anthropic doesn't comply to the order, which again, using this to punish companies is very, very bad. And funny enough, even the Republicans agree. Remember earlier where the modest use that Biden had to have the DPA require the AI labs submit a bit of information at the end of the year? The Republicans were pissed. Trump promises to repeal Biden's AI executive order. Apparently, Biden's order that the information should be sent to the government is dangerous. It hinders AI innovation and imposes radical left-wing ideas on the development of this technology. Republicans support AI development rooted in free speech and human flourishing. That's definitely what you're going for, right? I'm trying my best to not just take a side here. But there is only one side here being reasonable, and then there's one side that can't stop fucking contradicting itself for 15 seconds. It's insane. It's actually insane. The only defense of the administration here, the only defense is to say outright, yes, the details here go against our values. Yes, we hate big gov. Yes, we love open markets. Yes, we want companies to be able to control themselves. But we're willing to put all of that aside temporarily because we care about this one other thing more. We accept that we are doing all the things we hate because there's this one other thing we want that bad. That is the actual only way to defend this action. Enough of the nonsense. Let's read what Dario said. I believe deeply in the existential importance of using AI to defend the United States and other democracies and to defeat our autocratic adversaries. Anthropic has therefore worked proactively to deploy our models to the Department of War and to the intelligence community. We were the first frontier AI company to deploy our models in the U.S. government's classified networks, the first to deploy them at the national labs, and the first to provide custom models for national security customers. Claude is extensively deployed across the Department of War and other national security agencies for mission-critical applications, such as intelligence analysis, modeling and simulation, operation planning, cyber operations, and more. Anthropic has also acted to defend America's lead in AI, even when it is against the company's short-term interest. We chose to forego several $100 million in revenue to cut off the use of Claude by firms linked to the Chinese Communist Party, some of whom have been designated by the Department of War as Chinese military companies. They shut down CCP-sponsored cyber attacks that attempted to abuse Claude, all anti-China stuff. Anthropic has, as we've established earlier this week, very much is in war against China themselves. Anthropic understands that the Department of War, not private companies, make military decisions. We have never raised objections to particular military operations nor attempted to limit use of our technology in an ad hoc manner. However, in a narrow set of cases, we believe AI can undermine rather than defend democratic values. There is a rich irony here that they are concerned about democracy and freedom not being honored, and now they are being treated by the least free and democratic actions I've seen a government take in a long ass time. Some uses are also simply out of the bounds of what today's technology can safely and reliably do. Two such use cases have never been included in our contracts with the Department of War, and we believe they should not be included. The first is mass domestic surveillance, and the second is fully autonomous weapons. They specify with the fully autonomous weapons that today, frontier AI systems are simply not reliable enough to power fully autonomous weapons. We will not knowingly provide a product that puts America warfighters and civilians at risk. We have offered to work directly with the Department of War on research and development to improve the reliability of these systems, but they have not accepted this offer. In addition, without proper oversight, fully autonomous weapons cannot be relied upon to exercise the critical judgment that our highly trained professional troops have exhibited every day. They need to be deployed with proper guardrails, which don't exist today. Imagine if everybody's Claude bot suddenly had a gun. I've gotten so many rogue texts and things from people who let their OpenClaw run their iMessage. Imagine if it had weapons. To our knowledge, these two exceptions have not been a barrier to accelerating the adoption and use of our models within our armed forces to date. Again, they used it for the Venezuela raid just a few weeks ago. The Department of War has stated that they will only contract with AI companies who accede to any lawful use and remove safeguards in the cases mentioned above. They have threatened to remove us from their systems if we maintain these safeguards. They've also threatened to designate us a supply chain risk, a label reserved for U.S. adversaries never before applied to an American company, and to invoke the Defense Production Act to force the safeguards removal. So they're going to deem them a supply chain risk, remove them from the systems, and then force them to integrate nationalist style into the government stuff to comply as a third party forced to do the government's work for free because of the DPA. Insane. Also a good point that the latter two threats are inherently contradictory. They label us a security risk, and the other labels Claude as essential to national security. Yeah, insane. Regardless, these threats don't change our position. We cannot in good conscience accept the request. It is the department's prerogative to select contractors most aligned with their vision. But given the substantial value that Anthropic's technology provides to our armed forces, we hope they reconsider. Our strong preference is to continue to serve the department and our warfighters with our 2 requested safeguards in place. Should the department choose to offboard Anthropic, we will work to enable a smooth transition to another provider, avoiding any disruption to ongoing military planning, operations, or other critical missions. Can you imagine Grok running all of this? I'm just imagining a drone shouting for Jeffrey as it crashes into something. Like just imagine a gun making a Jeffrey Epstein joke. I'm sorry, I had to make one political joke. It's so hard to not call internet comment etiquette Eric right now and have him make a joke about robot warfighters in bikinis or something. Back to responsible reporting, there's one other important piece here. The open letter, we will not be divided. This is a letter from various labs, not the labs themselves, but employees at these labs. The Department of War is threatening to invoke the Defense Production Act to force Anthropic to serve their model to the military and tailor its model to the military's needs, and to label the company a supply chain risk. All in retaliation for Anthropic sticking to their red line to not allow the models to be used for domestic mass surveillance and autonomous killing people without human oversight. The Pentagon's negotiating with Google and OpenAI to try to get them to agree on what Anthropic has refused. Also notice that the Pentagon is not talking to xAI. Even the government realizes that Grok models are useless. They're trying to divide each company with fear that the other will give in. The strategy only works if none of us know where the others stand. This letter serves to create shared understanding and solidarity in the face of this pressure from the Department of War. We are the employees of Google and OpenAI, 2 of the top AI companies in the world. We hope our leaders will put aside their differences and stand together to continue to refuse the Department of War's current demands for permission to use our model for domestic mass surveillance and autonomously killing people without human oversight. Signed by 175 Google employees and 47 OpenAI employees so far. I hope that number is a lot higher by the time you guys see this. Link in the description for anybody who happens to work at those 2 companies that wants to add their signature. I think this is a really important thing to stand for. Yes, I, the guy who can't help but bully Anthropic at every opportunity, am telling you guys to go sign a document defending Anthropic. I think this is really important. I don't know what else to say on this one. I'm sorry for getting political, but I like living in a free country. I know, crazy, really biased out here, wanting freedom in the country I live in, but here we are. Let me know how y'all feel about this one. And until next time, peace, nerds.